The sun had barely risen over the Nevada hills when Cole Bennett pulled his worn-out truck into the gravel lot of the government's wild horse auction. Frost clung to the fence posts like silver threads, and his boots crunched on the ground as he stepped out, the cold morning air biting at his skin. He wasn't there to buy. Not today. For Cole, these auctions were just part of the routine, a sad, necessary ritual where the wild spirit of the West was measured, priced, and sold to the highest bidder. He often came to watch, sometimes to help a neighbor transport a horse, other times simply because he couldn't stay away. But deep down, he hated this place. The sound of frightened hooves echoing off metal gates always left a knot in his chest. He pushed his hat down against the chill and walked toward the pens. Men in thick coats leaned on rails, murmuring about muscle tone and breeding lines. Auctioneers' assistants moved briskly, marking tags on restless animals. And then Cole saw it. A small bay foal pressed into the farthest corner of the pen, trembling so violently its whole body seemed to quiver. Something about that foal stopped him cold. It wasn't just fear. There was a kind of desperation in its eyes, wild and hollow, like a creature that had seen something it couldn't unseen. Its coat was matted with dust, streaked with what looked like old wire cuts. The animal's breath came in shallow bursts, nostrils flaring as if every sound might be danger. "Poor little guy," Cole muttered under his breath. "You've had it rough, haven't you?" He stayed longer than he meant to, just watching. The foal didn't meet his gaze, didn't respond when the handlers approached. It only flinched over and over again, as though invisible ghosts circled it. When the bidding started, Cole had already told himself a dozen times he wouldn't get involved. He didn't need another mouth to feed, not with hay prices the way they were. But when the auctioneer's gavel came down and no one raised a hand for the terrified foal, something inside Cole shifted. 20, he heard himself say. His voice cut through the murmurs. A few heads turned. $20, he repeated, louder this time. The auctioneer blinked, surprised. "We got 20? Anyone for 25? Silence. The room seemed to hold its breath. Then, bang. The gavel fell. Sold? And just like that, Cole Bennett, who'd sworn he wouldn't bring another animal home, was now the owner of a wild foal no one else wanted. Back at his ranch, Cole led the horse from the trailer, giving it space. The foal's legs trembled so badly it nearly stumbled. Its eyes darted everywhere, fence posts, barn doors, shadows, as if searching for threats that only it could see. Cole spoke softly, the way his father used to when calming down spooked cattle. "You're safe here, boy," he said, voice low and steady. "Ain't nobody gonna hurt you now." He named him Ranger. The name felt right, something strong, protective, a little wild. Ranger didn't eat much that first night, nor the next. He refused to be touched, even brushed. Cole didn't push it. He knew trust wasn't something you could buy at an auction. It had to be earned. Slow and honest. Days turned into weeks. Each morning Cole brought feed and water, speaking to the foal as he worked. Sometimes he'd sit on an old overturned bucket just outside the pen, reading aloud from the newspaper, his deep voice filling the quiet. Slowly, Ranger began to relax. His breathing steadied. His eyes softened. And once, just once, he took a step closer instead of pulling away. That moment changed everything. Cole realized then that what he'd rescued wasn't just a horse. It was a soul on the edge of breaking. And somehow, that bond started healing them both. Still, there were things about Ranger that didn't make sense. He wasn't like any wild foal Cole had ever handled. His reactions were too specific, too sharp. The sound of a truck backfiring sent him into a frenzy. The sight of a man wearing dark glasses made him bolt, And once, when a low-flying helicopter passed overhead, the animal went into a blind panic, throwing himself against the stall walls until he bled. Cole had seen fear before, but not like this. This was something deeper, something taught. He tried to shake the thought. Maybe the foal had been rounded up rough by contractors, or maybe he'd survived a bad storm. Horses carried trauma like people did. It could come from anywhere. Still, he couldn't let it go. There were scars around Ranger's fetlocks that looked too clean, too deliberate, as though a rope had been tied tight for days. Then one afternoon, as he was brushing out Ranger's mane, Cole noticed a small lump near the animal's shoulder blade. At first, he thought it was an old injury, but when he pressed lightly, he felt something hard beneath the skin. Metal. He froze. "What the hell?" he whispered. Ranger flinched, sensing his tension. Cole backed away, heart pounding. He fetched his knife and a pair of tweezers, carefully parting the hair until a small, metallic object came into view. A tracking chip, buried just deep enough to go unnoticed by anyone who wasn't looking. For a long time, Cole just stood there in the dim barn, staring at the tiny device gleaming under the light. Whatever this horse had run from, it wasn't just a bad roundup. Something, or someone, had wanted to keep tabs on him. And that was when Cole Bennett realized this wasn't just a rescue. It was the beginning of something far bigger than he could imagine. Because somewhere out there, someone was missing this horse, and they were about to find out who had him. Cole couldn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, that tiny metal tracker flashed in his mind like a warning light. It didn't make sense. Who would track a horse, and why hide it so carefully that it could pass for a scar? He sat at the kitchen table long after midnight, a cup of coffee growing cold beside him, staring at the device he'd laid on an old rag. It was small, no bigger than a coin, with faint numbers etched on the side. He'd handled all kinds of ranch gear in his life, brands, tags, even old GPS locators for cattle drives. But this wasn't any of those. This thing looked military, precise, expensive. The more he thought about it, the heavier his stomach felt. By morning, he'd made up his mind. After tending to the animals, he drove to the nearest town, a quiet strip of worn-out shops and a diner where gossip traveled faster than the wind. The sheriff's office sat at the corner, its flag flapping lazily in the sun. "Morning, Cole." Sheriff Dalton greeted him, boots on the desk, hat tipped low. "What brings you in?" Cole hesitated before pulling the small object from his jacket pocket and setting it on the desk. "Found this buried under the hide of a wild foal I brought home from the auction." Dalton straightened, eyebrows lifting. "A tracker?" Cole nodded. "Looks like it. Thought maybe it was some kind of new tagging system, but it doesn't match anything the BLM uses." The sheriff picked it up, turning it in the light. "You're right. I've seen ranch trackers. This isn't one. Could be something private, maybe law enforcement." Cole frowned. "Law enforcement tracking a wild horse?" Dalton didn't answer right away. He set the device down and leaned back in his chair. "You sure this thing came from that foal?" "Pulled it out myself," Cole replied. "Had to cut under the hide. Horse nearly jumped out of his skin." Dalton rubbed his jaw. "Leave it with me. I'll make a few calls, see what I can find out. Might be nothing. But keep that horse close for now." Cole's gut tightened. "You think someone's going to come looking for him?" Dalton's eyes met his. "If that tracker's active, they already know where he is." Cole drove back faster than he meant to, the truck rattling over the dirt road that led to his ranch. The wind had picked up, carrying the smell of sage and distant rain. When he pulled into the yard, the first thing he did was check the barn. Ranger stood quietly in the stall, head low, eyes half closed. He looked peaceful. but that calm only made Cole more uneasy. He reached out, brushing a hand over the foal's neck, feeling the steady thrum of its heartbeat. "Who put you through all this, boy?" he murmured. Ranger flicked his ears but said nothing, of course. Still, something about the way he leaned ever so slightly into Cole's touch felt like trust, fragile and new. Cole stayed by his side until dusk. That night, as thunder rolled in the distance, headlights swept across the far ridge. 2 vehicles. No rancher drove out that late. Cole watched from the porch, every muscle in his body tense. The truck slowed near the road that bordered his land, paused, then turned back into the darkness. He didn't sleep at all. Morning brought no peace. When Cole went out to the barn, he found fresh tire tracks by the fence line, deep, heavy treads that hadn't been there the day before. Someone had been close. Too close. He called Sheriff Dalton immediately, but the line went straight to voicemail. By noon, a government SUV rolled up his driveway. The emblem on the side wasn't the sheriff's. It was something else, plain black with a faint gold crest that caught the light. 2 men stepped out, suits crisp, expressions unreadable. "Mr. Bennett?" the taller one said, flashing an ID too quickly for Cole to read. "We understand you purchased a horse at the wild auction last week." Cole's jaw tightened. "That's right. We'd like to take a look at it." "What for?" "Routine check," the man said smoothly. "Wildlife tracking study. We believe that animal may have been tagged as part of an investigation." Cole's mind raced. "Investigation into what?" "I'm afraid that's classified, sir." He crossed his arms. "Then I'm afraid you're not looking at my horse." A brief silence hung in the air. The second man, younger and colder, stepped forward slightly. "Mr. Bennett, it's in your best interest to cooperate." Cole didn't flinch. "You show me a warrant and I'll cooperate. Until then, you can turn around." The men exchanged a glance. Finally, the taller one smiled, thin and practiced. "We'll be in touch." They turned, climbed back into the SUV, and drove off. Dust rose behind them like smoke. Cole stood there long after they were gone, heart pounding. Whatever this was, it wasn't routine, and now they knew exactly who he was. That evening, the sheriff finally called back. "Cole, that thing you brought me, it's not civilian tech. My contact in Reno says it matches devices used in DEA operations." Cole's hand went cold around the phone. "DEA? You mean drugs?" "Looks like it. They've been tracking an operation using livestock transport as cover, running shipments through remote ranches and auctions. Somehow, one of their tagged assets ended up in that wild horse sale. You're saying Ranger was part of a drug operation?" "Indirectly. Could be they tagged a horse trailer or a shipment mule, and this foal was caught in it. Point is, that tracker wasn't supposed to be found." Cole looked toward the barn where Ranger was quietly munching hay. "And now they know I've got him." "Exactly," Dalton said grimly. "Keep your gates locked, and don't let anyone near that horse. I'll send a deputy your way by morning." The line went dead, leaving only the soft hum of static. Cole set the phone down slowly. Outside, the wind howled through the fields. He could feel the storm coming, not just in the weather, but in the air itself. Ranger lifted his head suddenly, ears pricking toward the horizon. For a moment, the foal seemed to sense it too, something unseen moving closer. Cole's gaze followed the ridge where the headlights had been the night before. He didn't know who those men were or what they wanted from a half-wild horse, but he knew one thing for sure. Whatever secret Ranger carried, people were willing to cross lines to get it back. And Cole Bennett wasn't about to let that happen. The morning light came in hard and white through the kitchen window, but Cole barely noticed. He hadn't slept. The sheriff's words echoed in his head. DEA operations, drug shipments, livestock transport as cover. It sounded like something out of a movie, not the quiet, dusty life he'd always known. But Ranger's trembling eyes, the hidden tracker, and the men in the black SUV told him this was no story. It was real, and it was getting closer. He poured himself a mug of coffee, hands rough from years of work, but even they trembled a little now, the weight of it all pressed down on him. Somewhere someone thought a horse on his ranch was worth tracking across the desert. That meant trouble. Serious trouble. After feeding Ranger, Cole hitched up his old trailer and drove back into town. He didn't tell Dalton, he didn't tell anyone. If someone had eyes on him, the fewer people who knew what he was doing, the better. His first stop was a mechanic he knew out past the feed store, Danny Ruiz, a man who used to work Army logistics before life got small and quiet again. "Morning, Cole," Danny greeted, wiping grease from his hands. "What brings you down here?" Cole pulled the tracker from his pocket, wrapped in a handkerchief. "You ever seen one of these?" Danny frowned, taking it carefully. "Huh? Not in a while." He turned it over, eyes narrowing. "Looks military grade. Encrypted transmitter. This ain't something you buy at Radio Shack." "Any way to find out who was using it?" "Maybe," Danny said, scratching his chin. "But if it's DEA tech, it's locked tighter than a bank vault. I could run a frequency trace, see if it's still pinging." Cole nodded. "Do it." Danny hooked up a scanner, fingers moving with practiced ease. The screen flickered, then blinked red. "It's still live," Danny muttered, "and it's been transmitting every few hours on a rotating signal. Whoever's monitoring it, they know it moved." Cole felt a chill run through him. "Moved how?" Danny met his eyes. "Like they're tracking something that's not supposed to be where it is. You sure you want to keep that horse, Cole?" Cole took the tracker back, pocketing it carefully. "I'm not giving him up." Danny exhaled. "Then be careful. If that signal's active, they'll come knocking again, and next time they won't ask." By the time Cole got home, storm clouds had gathered over the mountains. The sky was bruised purple, the air heavy with static. Ranger stood restless in the paddock, nostrils flaring, hooves shifting nervously in the dirt. Cole leaned against the fence, watching him. "You feel it too, don't you?" he said quietly. The foal flicked his ears, eyes darting to the horizon. Thunder cracked, low and rolling. Cole could almost swear the horse knew what was coming, like instinct warned him before reason could. That night, lightning flashed across the desert, lighting up the yard in harsh white bursts. Cole lay awake, every sound magnified, the creak of the windmill, the distant rumble of trucks on the highway, the nervous shuffle of horses in their stalls. Then, sometime past midnight, Ranger screamed. Cole was out of bed in an instant, boots half-laced as he ran to the barn. The foal was thrashing, eyes wild, muscles slick with sweat. It wasn't fear of thunder. This was something else, something deeper. Cole grabbed the halter, trying to steady him. "Easy, boy, easy." But Ranger's panic only grew. In one violent motion, he reared back, snapping the lead rope, sending hay and dust flying. Cole ducked, heart pounding. Then, over the storm, he heard it. Another sound. Engines. More than one. He killed the barn light and ran to the porch. 2 trucks were rolling slow up the dirt road, lights off, their silhouettes black against the lightning flashes. Cole's mind raced. If those were the same men as before, this wasn't a visit. This was a recovery. He sprinted back inside, grabbed his rifle from the rack, and checked the chamber. Outside, the truck stopped at the gate. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a door opened. "Mr. Bennett," a voice called out, muffled by the wind. "We're here for the horse." Cole didn't answer. Rain was coming down now, hard and fast. He crouched by the window, watching. One of the men shone a flashlight toward the barn. Another climbed the fence. Cole fired a warning shot into the air. The echo cracked through the storm like thunder. "Next one won't miss," he shouted. They froze. Then, slowly, the men backed off, retreating to their trucks. Within seconds, the engines roared to life and they disappeared into the night. Cole stood there for a long time, chest heaving, rifle still hot in his hands. He wasn't sure who those men were, but they weren't law enforcement. That much he knew now. By dawn, the rain had stopped, leaving the world washed clean and quiet. But Cole knew the calm wouldn't last. He went to the barn, finding Ranger trembling but alive. The foal nuzzled his sleeve weakly, the first real sign of trust since the auction. Cole stroked his mane, his voice low. "You're safe, boy. I promise you're safe." He didn't know how he'd keep that promise, but he meant every word. Then his phone buzzed. A message from Dalton. "Cole, got a call from the DEA. They're sending someone out. Don't talk to anyone till they get there." Cole stared at the message. Too late for that. Because as he looked out across the yard, a new vehicle was already pulling up. Black, government issue, and this time with real plates. Out stepped a woman in a dark jacket, her badge glinting in the sunlight. She didn't look angry. She looked tired. "Mr. Bennett," she said, "I'm Agent Marin Doyle. We need to talk about that horse of yours." Cole sized her up in silence. Years on a ranch taught him to read people fast. The tilt of their shoulders, the tone under their words. Marin Doyle wasn't bluffing. She looked like someone who'd seen too much. Someone carrying the weight of secrets. "Talk fast," he said. "I've had enough visitors in black cars for 1 week." Marin nodded, glancing toward the barn. "I'm not here to take your horse, Mr. Bennett. I'm here to tell you what you've stumbled into." Cole folded his arms. "That tracker you folks left inside him?" She hesitated. "It wasn't supposed to end up in an animal?" "Yeah, I figured that out myself." Marin exhaled, the tension in her shoulders easing a little. 3 months ago, we infiltrated a smuggling ring using livestock shipments to move narcotics across state lines. One of their cover operations involved fake adoption auctions, wild horses, cattle, anything that could justify transport trucks. Cole's stomach turned. "They used horses as cover for drug runs?" "Yes," she said. "And when we planted trackers on their vehicles, one of their men found out. There was a firefight in the desert. They ditched the evidence, including a trailer full of animals. Your foal was among them." Cole felt the world tilt for a second. "So he's not wild?" "Not entirely," she said softly. "He was born in captivity, likely raised near those smuggling camps. We think the scars you found came from being restrained during transport. He's seen things, Mr. Bennett. That's why he reacts the way he does." Cole's voice dropped. "You saying he's a witness?" Marin almost smiled. "Not in the way you mean. But yes, his existence proves the route. The chip you found? It holds GPS logs tied to a cartel network. You weren't just lucky finding him. You blew a hole in a federal case." Cole stared at her. "And now they want him back." "Exactly. The people after him aren't DEA. They're the ones we're trying to catch." He let that sink in, the pieces clicking into place. "So what happens now?" Marin's gaze was steady. "You and that horse go into protective custody. We extract the data, shut the operation down, and get you home safe." Cole shook his head slowly. "I don't run from trouble, Agent. Not on my land." She sighed. "I figured you'd say that." Lightning cracked in the distance again, though the sky was clear this time. Somewhere out there, danger was still circling, and Cole Bennett was done being hunted. Agent Doyle stayed through the afternoon, her black SUV parked like a silent sentinel by the gate. She wasn't the type to talk more than necessary, but Cole could tell she was watching everything: the fence lines, the water troughs, even the hawks circling above. Years in the field had taught her to read patterns. Out here, the open sky was both freedom and exposure. Ranger was calmer now, though still cautious, his big eyes flicking from Cole to the agent as if trying to decide who he could trust more. Marin approached him slowly, her movements careful. The foal flinched at first, then relaxed when she didn't force it. "Beautiful animal," she said quietly. "You know, horses remember faces. Once they trust someone, they'll cross fire for them." Cole nodded. "Guess we've both been burned enough times to know what trust costs." That made her smile, a brief, human crack in the armor. "You might be right." She followed him inside, where coffee was still warm on the stove. The storm had left the air sharp and metallic, carrying that smell of wet earth that always came after Nevada rain. Cole poured her a cup. "So," he said, leaning against the counter, "you're telling me this little horse is the key to busting some cartel operation?" "Not just any operation," Marin said. "This one's been running under the radar for years. Ranch routes, fake rescues, forged adoption papers, all designed to move product across state lines without raising flags. The horse's chip gives us location data from one of their supply chains. If we can decrypt it, we'll know every drop site they've used." Cole frowned. "And if you can't?" She met his eyes. "Then they'll keep coming until they erase every loose end, including you." The words hung heavy in the kitchen, louder than thunder. Cole set his mug down. "So, what's your move, Agent?" "We have a safe house 2 counties over," she said. "We move you and the horse tonight. Quietly. Once we get the chip decrypted, you can come back." He shook his head. "That ain't happening. This ranch was my father's, his before him. I'm not leaving it to rot because some smugglers picked the wrong fence line." Marin exhaled slowly. "You're a stubborn man, Mr. Bennett. Call it loyal." They stared at each other for a moment. 2 people used to standing their ground, both carrying ghosts from different wars. Finally, she broke the silence. "Then we do it your way, but you follow my lead from here on out. Deal?" Cole gave a single nod. "Deal." As night fell, they worked quietly in the barn. Marin set up a small mobile unit, a black case full of blinking lights and cables. It looked out of place among hay bales and saddle gear. She inserted the tracker's chip, the screen flooding with encrypted data. "Encrypted with rotating ciphers," she muttered. "But it's clean. Definitely ours. I might be able to pull coordinates." Cole handed her a flashlight. "You ever think about quitting this line of work?" "Every week," she said. "Then I remember what happens if people like me do." Ranger stirred behind them, ears twitching. Cole went to calm him when a faint sound caught his ear. Distant at first, then sharper. Engines, again. He looked at Marin. She froze, then killed the lights. "Not them again," she whispered. Cole peeked through a crack in the barn wall. Headlights crawled along the ridge, moving slow and deliberate. 3 trucks this time. No plates. "They found the signal," Marin said under her breath. "They must have intercepted the transmission. Guess hiding's off the table." She drew her weapon, eyes scanning the yard. "You got back roads off this property?" 2. "One through Dry Creek, but it's muddy as hell after that storm." "Then we take it anyway. Get the horse." Cole didn't argue. He grabbed the halter, whispering to Ranger, who was trembling again but moved when Cole urged him forward. Together, they slipped out the back, the rain-damp air thick with tension. The first truck pulled up by the gate, headlights sweeping across the yard. Cole's heart hammered as he led Ranger down the dark slope behind the barn, keeping to the shadows. Marin covered their retreat, her pistol steady, her movements practiced. Then, a shout. "They're back there!" Gunfire cracked, sharp and fast. Bullets hit the fence post, splintering wood. Ranger reared in panic, but Cole held firm, whispering into his ear, "Easy, boy, easy." They reached the old creek bed, the ground slick beneath their boots. The truck engines roared closer. Marin fired twice, controlled bursts that hit tires, buying them a few seconds. "Move!" she barked. They scrambled through the shallow gully, mud sucking at their feet. Ranger stumbled but kept moving. Cole glanced back, saw light scattering, shadows running. Whoever these men were, they weren't afraid of federal agents. They made it to the other side just as one truck crashed through the fence behind them. Marin spun, fired again, and the vehicle skidded sideways. Cole whistled softly. "You shoot like you mean it." "I always mean it," she said without looking back. By the time they reached the ridge, dawn was bleeding pale light into the sky. Ranger was exhausted, foam streaking his neck. Cole patted his side. "You're tougher than you look, partner." Marin lowered her gun. "We'll hole up in the cabin near Dry Creek. It's off the grid. I'll get back up once we're inside." Cole hesitated. "And then?" "Then we finish this," she said. "For good." As they crested the ridge, the valley stretched below, silent, endless, shimmering with morning mist. The world looked peaceful again, but Cole knew better. Peace was just the quiet between storms. And somewhere out there, the men they'd escaped were regrouping. The next move would decide everything. For him, for Ranger, and for the truth buried under this whole operation. Cole took one last look back at his ranch. He'd always believed the land could protect him. But this time, he'd have to fight to protect it. He tightened his grip on the reins. "Let's finish what we started." The sun was climbing over the eastern ridge by the time they reached Dry Creek, its pale light bleeding across the broken terrain. The ground was still damp from the storm, and each hoofprint sank deep into the mud. Ranger's sides heaved, foam streaking his flanks, but he kept moving. Step after step, as if he understood that stopping wasn't an option. Cole walked beside him, one hand on the halter, the other gripping the strap of his rifle. He didn't say much. There wasn't anything left to say. The night had stripped away whatever illusions were left. This wasn't some misunderstanding with government agents or an accidental tangle with smugglers. This was a war being fought in the shadows, and somehow he'd been dragged right into the middle of it. Marin led the way, her eyes sharp, scanning the valley below. She was limping slightly from the chase. Cole noticed, though she didn't mention it. When they finally reached the small log cabin hidden beneath the cottonwoods, she let out a quiet breath of relief. "This'll do," she said, checking the perimeter. "Remote enough. No power lines. No signal trace." Cole helped Ranger settle under the awning, spreading hay and water from an old trough. The foal trembled but calmed when Cole's voice reached him, that same low, steady drawl that had pulled him from the wire weeks ago. "Easy now. You earned a rest." When he looked up, Marin was standing by the door, her pistol still in hand. Even here, surrounded by silence, she couldn't relax. "You trust anyone?" he asked. "Not since my last partner got buried under a fake name," she said quietly. Cole didn't push. He understood the kind of silence that came from loss. Inside, the cabin smelled of cedar and dust. It had probably belonged to some prospector decades back. One room, old stove, and a cot that sagged in the middle. Marin unpacked her gear on the table, laptop, comms array, and that black case still pulsing with faint blue light. "The tracker's still transmitting," she said. "They're not giving up." Cole leaned against the wall, arms folded. "So we give them something to chase." Marin looked up. "What do you mean?" "You said the chip logs GPS routes, right? What if we feed it a false trail? One that leads them away from here?" She hesitated. "That could work, but I'd need access to the chip's internal drive." Cole stepped closer. "Then tell me what you need." Marin smiled faintly. You ever think about working for the government?" He grinned. "Ma'am, I've been fighting nature my whole life. Paperwork's where I draw the line." For hours, they worked in silence. Marin typed code, lines of data spilling across the screen. Cole fed the fire, listening to the wind whistle through the cracks in the walls. Ranger dozed outside, his ears flicking every few minutes, still alert even in rest. By mid-afternoon, Marin leaned back, exhaustion etched into her face. It's done. The chip's transmitting a ghost signal. Southbound, toward the Arizona line. With luck, it'll buy us 12 hours. Then what? She rubbed her temples. Then we decrypt the original data and find out who's behind this whole operation. I've got fragments already. Coordinates, call logs, enough to start drawing a map. Cole poured her another cup of coffee, his eyes fixed on the horizon. You think this goes higher than smugglers? I think it always does, she said. These guys have political cover, funding, fake rescue paperwork signed by agencies that don't exist. This isn't just a crime. It's infrastructure. Cole was silent for a long moment. Then he said softly, You ever wonder why people still fight to do right when the system's that rotten? Marin looked up, her expression softer now. Because some people still can't sleep at night if they don't. He met her eyes and nodded once. Guess that makes two of us. As dusk crept in, the valley grew quiet again. Coyotes called in the distance. The creek shimmered like glass under the fading light. Cole stepped outside to check on Ranger. The foal lifted his head, nuzzling Cole's shoulder gently. The bond between them had deepened, no longer born of rescue, but of shared survival. He brushed the dirt from Ranger's coat, his voice low. You keep holding on, little fella. We ain't out of this yet. Behind him, Marin's voice came softly through the open door. You really love that horse, don't you? Cole didn't turn. He's more than a horse. He's proof the world can still be wild and worth fighting for. The agent was quiet for a while before saying, You sound like my father. He used to say the same thing about people. Cole smiled faintly. Maybe he was right. Just as night fully fell, a faint static hiss filled the cabin. Marin froze, eyes on the laptop. Someone's trying to access the signal, she whispered. Cole stepped in beside her. The map on the screen showed a flashing red dot, the false signal they'd sent toward the south. But now another dot had appeared, moving fast. Northbound, Marin said, her voice tightening. They didn't take the bait. They know where we are. Cole grabbed his rifle. How long? Maybe 20 minutes, less if they're cutting through the canyon. He looked at her. You ever ride? Not since Quantico. Well, he said, grabbing the saddle. You're about to remember how. They saddled Ranger in the half-dark, the foal's breath steaming in the cold night air. Cole tightened the straps, his movements quick but calm. Marin checked her pistol and slung her bag across her shoulder. The sound of engines echoed faintly again, distant but closing. Cole, Marin said, her tone low but steady. If they catch us, they'll kill the horse first. They can't let him live. Cole met her eyes. Then they'll have to go through me. He mounted, pulling Marin up behind him. Ranger shifted his weight, sensing the urgency. The air was sharp, the stars bright and cold above them. Cole gave one last look at the cabin, their temporary refuge already doomed to be burned out or worse. Then he clicked his tongue and whispered, Run. And Ranger ran. He tore across the flats like a ghost in the night, hooves pounding against wet earth, mane whipping in the wind. Marin clung tight, her voice carried away by the rush of air. Behind them, headlights appeared on the ridge, chasing like hungry eyes. But the Mustang was faster, faster than the engines, faster than the fear. He ran like freedom itself. The desert unfolded before them, vast, endless, shimmering under the cold moonlight. Each stride of Ranger's hooves seemed to echo through eternity, pounding against the earth like a heartbeat that refused to stop. The wind bit sharp against Cole's face, carrying the scent of dust, sagebrush, and danger. Behind them, the trucks roared closer. The headlights bounced off the canyon walls, slicing through the darkness. Marin clung to Cole, one hand gripping the saddle, the other holding her pistol close to her chest. "Where are we headed?" she shouted over the wind. "Red Mesa," Cole yelled back. "There's a dry ravine up there, narrow enough they can't drive through. If we make it, we might just have a chance." The name carried weight. Red Mesa, the place his father used to talk about. A stretch of land sacred to the locals, where the desert rose up in jagged cliffs and crimson stone. No one went there after dark, no one except men with nothing left to lose. Ranger galloped hard, his breath coming out in bursts of white mist. The Mustang's body was slick with sweat, muscles rippling with every movement. Cole could feel his strength fading, but he pressed him on. "Come on, boy, just a little farther." The first bullet struck the ground near them, spitting dust into the air. Marin fired back without hesitation. One clean shot that shattered a headlight. The truck swerved, then steadied again. "Keep your head down," Cole barked. "Already doing that?" They veered off the dirt road, cutting through the scrub and rock fields toward the rising mesa. The slope was steep, scattered with boulders and cactus spines that glimmered in the moonlight. Ranger stumbled once but recovered, his lungs wheezing. Cole whispered encouragement into his ear. "You're all right, partner. You've got this." As they climbed, the noise of engines grew fainter, replaced by the rush of wind and the rhythm of hooves striking stone. When they finally reached the narrow ravine, Cole pulled Ranger to a halt, both of them breathing hard. The mesa towered above them, a cathedral of stone painted in blood-red hues. There was no way forward but up. Cole dismounted, his boots crunching against the gravel. "We make our stand here." Marin scanned the ridge, assessing angles, exits, shadows. "You sure? No better place to die," he said quietly, loading his rifle. She gave a wry smile. "Let's try living instead." The first truck appeared minutes later, its lights cutting through the canyon mouth like a blade. Men poured out. Black clothes, masks, automatic rifles glinting under the moon. There were at least 6 of them, moving in practiced formation. Cole crouched behind a boulder. "You take the right flank," he whispered. "I'll hold the left." Marin nodded, her jaw set. "Copy that." The gunfire came fast, harsh, deafening, echoing off the rock walls. Sparks flew where bullets struck stone. Ranger reared and screamed, the sound carrying far into the desert night. Cole fired twice, dropping one of the men. He ducked back, heart pounding, the smell of gunpowder thick in the air. Marin's return shots were precise, each one calculated, controlled. But they were outnumbered. The attackers advanced, step by step, closing the gap. Cole's rifle clicked empty. He reached for his sidearm, teeth clenched. Then, a sound from above. A low, rhythmic hum. Headlights swept across the mesa ridge. Not trucks this time, but black helicopters. The DEA insignia gleamed faintly on the side. Marin exhaled in relief. Back up. But her relief didn't last. From the opposite ridge, another helicopter appeared. Smaller, unmarked, matte black. Its side door opened, revealing men in combat gear with no insignia at all. "Not ours," she hissed. Cole cursed under his breath. "Then we end it right here." The firefight erupted into chaos. Dust swirled. Shouts echoed. Bullets pinged off the rocks like angry bees. Cole moved instinctively, pulling Marin down as one round shattered the stone above her. She fired from cover, hitting another man clean in the shoulder. He spun and fell hard. Then a scream. One of the attackers clutching his leg as Ranger charged straight through the chaos, eyes blazing, hooves flashing like thunder. Cole's heart twisted. The Mustang wasn't running, he was fighting. "Ranger, no!" Cole shouted, but it was too late. The foal rammed into one of the masked men, sending him sprawling. The distraction gave Marin her opening. She hit the detonator on a small charge she'd planted earlier. The canyon wall erupted in a flash of light and sound, rocks cascading down to block the passage. When the dust cleared, the gunfire had stopped. The unmarked helicopter was pulling back, retreating into the night. The DEA chopper circled overhead, floodlights sweeping across the ravine. "Cole Bennett," a voice boomed through the speaker. "This is Agent Davis with the DEA. Stand down." Marin lowered her gun slowly. Cole stayed still for a moment, then nodded. "We're done here." Ranger stood trembling nearby, his sides heaving, his body streaked with sweat and dust. Cole walked over, laying a hand on his neck. "You did good, boy. You did real good." By dawn, the scene was calm again. Agents moved in and out of the canyon, cataloging weapons, collecting evidence, zip-tying the few men who'd survived. Marin stood beside Cole, watching it all in silence. "They'll trace the chip data now," she said. "The ring's finished. You did more than you'll ever know." Cole didn't answer. He was watching Ranger, the wild foal who'd somehow carried them both through hell and back. The morning light caught the horse's mane, turning it gold. "What happens to him now?" Cole asked quietly. Marin smiled. "He's yours, Cole. After all this, I think he's earned his place." Cole reached out and stroked Ranger's muzzle. The foal nuzzled him gently, that same quiet trust they'd built from the beginning. For a long time, neither man nor animal moved. The world was still. The wind, the dust, the light. Finally, Marin broke the silence. "You ever think about writing this down someday?" Cole chuckled softly. "Who'd believe it?" She smiled faintly. "Maybe that's the point." Cole looked out across the desert, the horizon painted in soft pink and gold. "Nah," he said. "Some stories ain't meant for telling. They're meant for remembering." Ranger tossed his head, the wild spirit in him as alive as ever. Cole swung into the saddle, turning back toward home. Behind him, the agents loaded up their trucks, the sound fading into the distance. Ahead, the land stretched wide and open, untouched, unforgiving, and free. And somewhere deep inside, Cole knew that the Mustang he'd rescued hadn't just been a horse. He'd been a mirror, a reflection of every fight worth fighting, of every wild thing that refuses to be broken. Sometimes life ties us down with wires we never asked for: fear, loss, or the weight of our own past. But just like that wild Mustang, strength isn't about how fast you can run or how many battles you win. It's about never letting your spirit break, no matter how long you've been trapped. Cole didn't just free a horse that day. He freed himself. From guilt, from pain, from the idea that he couldn't change the world around him. And maybe that's what this story reminds us all. That healing doesn't come from escaping the storm, but from learning to ride through it. That even in the hardest, loneliest places, there's always a reason to fight one more round. Because sometimes, your courage becomes the light for someone else, lost in the dark. If this story touched your heart, or made you think of the battles you faced, remember, you're not alone. Every scar tells a story. Every struggle builds your strength. And every time you rise, you prove that nothing and no one can truly break you. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What part of this story hit you the hardest? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one of them, and if you want to hear more true, powerful, and heart-touching stories like this one, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you never miss a story that might just change how you see life. Because here, every story reminds us that even the wildest hearts deserve a second chance.